Welcome back to our special one-hour election edition of Upfront. I'm talking with Republican Governor Scott Walker, and a reminder, my interview with Democratic candidate Mary Burke is coming up in our second half hour today. Governor, let's talk about what a second Walker term might look like, a formal four-year term. Let's talk taxes. You have said you'd like to continue to lower the tax burden in the state, especially income, property taxes. But how do you do that without raising the sales tax? Unless you raise the sales tax, is that really possible?
Sure. Yeah, we've done it.
How?
$2 billion we've reduced over the last couple of years. Typical family already this year sees a savings of $322. This combination will put more money into our schools, our technical colleges, our municipalities. That'll help offset some of the money they otherwise have to raise in terms of property taxes. And we'll find ways to keep chipping away at income taxes. I think for us it's about continually reinvesting that back in the economy. I always say, I call it the Kohl's curve. I just think, you know, how does a company like Kohl's make money? Well, they keep taking, you know, the price of a jersey from $29.99 down to $19.99. You add in your Kohl's credit card, an insert from the Sunday paper, and your Kohl's cash, and next thing you know, they're paying you to buy that shirt. So how do they make money? They make money off of volume. To me, I apply the same principle to taxpayers' money. You keep finding ways to put it back in the economy for consumers, for small business owners, for new companies wanting to start up. I think we'll generate more revenues in the future.
So this is a promise that there will be no sales tax increase in the state of Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
As long as you're governor.
Absolutely.
That's off the table completely.
Right. Yeah, I'm not looking to shift. I'm looking to grow the economy, to continue to cut back on waste, fraud, and abuse as we've targeted the hundreds of millions of dollars over the last few years, to build off of that, to be financially prudent, to make some changes in terms of entitlement reform, because I want to move more people off of government assistance and into the workforce, not only for the taxpayer savings, but for employers looking for workers, and most importantly, for those people themselves. All of those things together, I think, will help fuel a positive economy, help balance the budget, and do so in a way that allows us to cut taxes and freeze tuition.
And do you think to some people in our state the plan to drug test people who receive government assistance looks mean-spirited?
No, I think other states that have done that in and of itself in a vacuum, and I think some might argue that in those cases it was punitive. What we tie it into is a whole process for adults without children who are able to work, so it doesn't affect kids. But we tie it into employability training. I'm one of the handful of states in America that pushed back on the waiver from the federal government and said, we're going to require people getting assistance to get employability skills. I put my money where my mouth is. I put $17 million into that. Just because I think long term, what Tommy Thompson pushed years ago here and Bill Clinton signed into office is now under my predecessor who was retreated on. I think it's much more important to give people the skills that they need to get into the workforce. There are, today alone, this week alone, there are more than 70,000 job openings posted on our state website, jobcenterwisconsin.com, for so many of those people on assistance who are able to work without children. We needed to get them in the workforce. And what I hear from employers all the time who have the help wanted signs out there is I need people who know how to work, and I need people who can pass a drug test.
You just brought up that number, and I wanted to ask you this question. You made the comment during the debate that we don't have a jobs problem, we have a work problem. You just explained why you said that. But you also said at a Journal Sentinel editorial board meeting that you didn't see the reason for a minimum wage. You don't support a raise in the minimum wage.
I don't support repealing it or a raise. And the reason for that is because I think... Oh, go ahead.
But let me just ask this question. To some people out there in the state, those two statements, could they read those statements as Scott Walker simply cannot relate to people who are struggling in the state of Wisconsin?
For a guy who started out washing dishes at the Countryside restaurant to save up money for school, then ended up flipping hamburgers, to a guy who was born and raised in a small town, to a pastor, a small town minister, and a mom who worked part-time as a secretary, where we didn't know until later in life we were poor, who had to work for everything we had and haven't stopped working all the way through there. I just find that insulting.
That people would think you couldn't relate to.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like
it's just one of those where that's a persona that many the tens of millions of dollars have come into the state over the last several years, I think want to perpetuate that. The reality is, in both cases, as you just mentioned, you listen to it in context. What I'm saying is I don't like the argument about how low wages are. I want to talk about how we raise wages for everybody. I want wages that are 2 or 3 or 4 times what they're debating about the minimum wage on. To me, if you want a young kid like me who was working at McDonald's, should be paid at a different level than somebody who's trying to raise a family. And I want to help people get the skills that they need to get the jobs that are available that are paying, like the ones I just announced the other day, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 or more, and we can do that, whether it's in welding, machining, fabricating, information technology, transportation, early childhood development, or healthcare. There are an abundance of jobs out there. The problem we have is not just the creation of jobs, and I want to create more jobs. I want to help the people of the state create more jobs. I want to help people connect the dots, though, between people looking for a job, or in many cases, a better job, with the skills they need. The big problem here isn't the minimum wage. It's the fact that too many people are living paycheck to paycheck. I believe that for many people, that's their piece of the American dream, is not to live under that stress, is to be able to have the freedom to breathe a sigh of relief every time the mortgage comes due.
I want to touch on a couple of different topics. One quickly here before we go to the break. The future of the voucher program in this state, should you be reelected. Right now, you've got 1,000 students. Statewide program, 1,000 students. People want to know, do you want to lift the cap entirely, or do you just want to raise it? What are your plans?
Well, I think you raise it. I think you got to fit the...
What's a reasonable number?
Well, I think it depends on capacity. A lot of it depends on what capacity.
4,000? 5,000?
Again, those are all things we're going to have to do a survey of schools around the state and see the measure. I have 2 sons that went through public schools. I got 2 nieces who are in public schools. I believe our reforms have done more to help public schools than just about any education reform in this state in the last 25 years. $3 billion worth of savings for schools, technical colleges, local governments, and state government. So I want schools to succeed. It's why they are. 4 years in a row, graduation rates are up, 3rd grade reading scores are up, ACT scores are up, now 2nd best in the country. But I also know there are going to be some families out there where they have a son or daughter. I just met a woman the other night last week in Appleton named Dina, whose son was struggling horribly 2 years ago in a public school. Now, they're not beating up on the public schools. They just said in his instance, it wasn't right for him. He was being bullied. He was faring poorly. He was one of the first vouchers. He went from a public school to a private school in that area because they wouldn't have the means otherwise.
You're saying you're not creating a separate entitlement system by expanding the voucher program?
No, we want to make sure that every child in this state, that every student in this state has access to a world-class education. And for someone like Dina's son, the woman I met the other day, who's now got twice, his test scores have doubled. He's now playing the trumpet in the band. He signed up for football. This is a kid who loves school now. That was the right place for him. Now, most kids are going to be like my kids. They're going to go to a public school, and our reforms have helped those public schools. And the facts, despite all the attack ads, clearly show that public schools are doing better in this state. But for others, a charter, a choice, a voucher, or even a homeschool environment is going to be the right place for that son or daughter. And I want to make sure every family has that choice.
We're going to take one final break, try and get to a couple more topics. Transportation, might even talk about social issues. Do they matter in this race? We'll be right back.
Still ahead, Mike's interview with Democratic candidate Mary Burke, plus Mike's analysis, the keys to success for Republicans on Election Day.